My name is Beth Rodeo. I am a founding member of No Sharing Gas Pipeline and a member of the Mothers Out Front Pipeline Task Force. I'll be emceeing today. We are here today to announce the new group, Mass Healthcare Providers Against Fracked Gas, and announce their call for a hold on all new major fracked gas infrastructure in Massachusetts until health concerns are taken into account. Mass Healthcare Providers Against Fracked Gas is a group of concerned healthcare providers who seek to protect the health and well-being of patients, families, and communities in the face of major new fracked gas infrastructure and in the face of climate change. If you would like to connect with them, please see Susan Lees. She has a contact sheet. She's raising her hand. Our press person is Karen Chase, a nurse who lives locally and resides part-time in a town that was impacted by the former Kinder Morgan Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline route. Karen has identified herself for the press. For about 20 minutes, we will be hearing from 4 speakers, then open it up for questions from the press. This event is being videotaped and will be available on our website. Our first speaker is Dr. Michael Kochi. Dr. Kochi is a critical care and emergency medicine physician and a clinical researcher. He is also a member of the steering committee for Stop the West Roxbury Lateral Pipeline. Please welcome Dr. Kochi.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Michael Kochi. I'm a practicing physician. I do clinical research. I'm a parent, and I'm a concerned citizen. And I first became involved in this work about 1.5 years ago when I learned that a 750 PSI pipeline was being built in my town. It was slated to carry fracked gas, and despite opposition from our local leaders, outspoken opposition from local residents, we had no recourse. And we learned that the governing body that is supposed to regulate this sort of activity, gave them full blessing to use eminent domain to place this pipeline underneath soccer fields in our town, right by children's schools. And it was at that point that I decided I needed to get involved. So who is Mass Healthcare Providers Against Fracked Gas? We are doctors, nurses, public health professionals, researchers, who believe that we, as healthcare providers, have a unique responsibility to speak out against any threat to the health and safety of the patients for whom we care, as well as the broader community. Fracked gas and the infrastructure that is being created to support its ongoing extraction and interstate transport is exactly that threat. Today, we are using our medical and our public health expertise and our collective voice to call attention to the need for a comprehensive health impact assessment to address the cumulative impact of all of these ongoing, new, and continuing gas pipeline infrastructure projects. Until this can be accomplished, these projects must be put on hold and not advance any further. In addition to the known risks related to gas pipeline infrastructure, much remains unknown about the potential safety threats. As healthcare professionals, we are concerned about the short and the long-term effects of exposures to toxins, pollutants, and carcinogens from living so close to pipelines carrying fracked gas, to compressor stations like the one being proposed in Weymouth, and to the metering and regulating station, just like the one behind us here today, to liquefied natural gas storage terminals. We are concerned about the data that we already have that indicates poor air quality near these facilities, placing those living nearby at risk for serious adverse health effects. As healthcare professionals, we are also concerned about the issue of safety to the public, as it relates to the very real risk of explosions. There are unfortunately multiple examples from across the country of technical failures, of human errors, of injuries and deaths. Most recently, last April, a pipeline owned by Spectra exploded in rural Pennsylvania. This blast created a hole 12 feet deep, scorched over 40 acres, and left a single 26-year-old man with third-degree burns over a significant portion of his body. A local fire chief from that area described a massive fireball, and in his words, said that it was like looking into hell. Such an event, should it occur in a much more densely populated area, such as here in West Roxbury, would have catastrophic impact in terms of morbidity and mortality. This type of scenario makes high-pressure transmission pipelines and related infrastructure a genuine public health threat. But the good news is that we're not alone. Our colleagues in New York have led the way by highlighting the risks associated with frack gas infrastructure and for calling for a comprehensive evaluation of the impact of the human health of this infrastructure. We are joining the ranks of healthcare professionals in other states and countries who are using their expertise and their voices to call greater attention to these dangers. Today is just the beginning of the great work that Massachusetts healthcare providers against frack gas can accomplish as we engage with other healthcare providers across the Commonwealth, as well as other concerned groups and our elected leaders to protect the health and safety of our patients and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Erskine is a mother of 3 young children. She very recently moved to Rehoboth, Massachusetts, where a compressor station is planned. This is her story.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Mass Health Providers Against Frack Gas, Susan Lees from Mothers Out Front, who invited me here to speak today. So I had a prepared speech, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go with it, because I agree that we need to do more research and more people need to get involved in this. I only found out about this 3 weeks ago. And I'd like to thank your efforts that you've put forth, because I think it's laid the foundation for people like me who's just going about their day and working and raising their kids to get my head out of the sand and realize what's going on. And then I had a wonderful neighbor that knocked on my door. I just had moved to the town of Rehoboth just a couple of months ago. And Leslie knocked on my door and started talking about a compressor station. And at first I thought, boy, I have a lot of things to do today. I wonder how long she's going to sit here and talk to me. But then I started to listen and I thought maybe I should just go down to the town hall meeting to find out what's going on. And what I found out really scared me, because my house is close to the compressor station. And I have 3 children. I have a 10-year-old boy who's fought asthma since he was 5 months old. I have a 6-year-old girl and a 3-year-old baby girl. And I don't want them to get asthma. So I found out a little bit more about the compressor station, and I decided to join all of you and do my research. And I was grateful enough to be asked to come talk to share that story today. So I want to tell you a little bit about my son. My son developed asthma around 5 months old. We had lots of emergency room visits. I wanted to find the best environment for him. And even in his room, we used to call his room the biodome, because, we tried to use cool mist humidifiers. We brought in plants to try to, create, a better breathing environment, because, the English ivy and stuff, they give off oxygen. And I did my research around where to live in Massachusetts, where he could live that might help him out a little bit more, making things easier. And what I found was the answer was actually in nature. Scientifically, referred to as bioindicators. I didn't even know about this, but lichen. Lichen is that whitish fungus stuff that you see growing all over the trees. And it's good for the trees. It's actually an indicator of a very healthy breathing environment. And in Rehoboth, it's abundant. It grows all over the forest there. So I thought, this is perfect. So we moved to Rehoboth. And then I find out that my house that I just bought is in the incineration zone, right on the edge of the evacuation zone. If anything ever happened, that would affect my family. And then I thought, well, what are the chances that might happen? Well, it has actually happened in other states, so maybe I should be concerned with that. But then I thought, what's worse than that is that they're going to put up toxic chemicals every day, and the air will take those around to the people, the residents, the 12,000 people that live in Rehoboth, the people of Acushnet. Attleboro, we're all affected by this. Acushnet, is getting, they're not getting a compressor station, but they're also affected with what's being done there. And I looked into what those toxins were, and I just want to read the list of what I found out. And I might not say all of these things correctly, but formaldehyde, benzene, toluene, okay? Ethyl benzene, I can't say this one, xylene, hydrogen disulfide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane. But what's even worse is the particulate matter that the compressor station will release into the air by anyone who is in breathing range. And we all know the wind moves. So for me, I think about my son wearing his nebulizer. And I think about, for all of us, we're much more likely to develop asthma. My 2 girls are more likely to develop asthma with this air blowing over our home. I think about all of those carcinogens, the 10 I mentioned, and the fine particulate matter in the air. And I think about, it's one compressor station in Rehoboth. There's 12,000 people in Rehoboth. There's all those children. There's children within the proximity, elementary schools within the proximity of the compressor station. And I think about, it's not just the one compressor station. It's the one they want to put in Weymouth as well. And I think back, I've heard now that Kinder Morgan tried to fill Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire with compressor stations a while back, and Massachusetts residents said no. And Kinder Morgan backed down. Now comes along a Texas-based company called Spectra. And I hope that we are strong and more educated now and willing to fight for our right for clean air and for our children to grow up in the Massachusetts that we knew and grew up in. So I'm just one mother with 3 children and a dog. And I want to protect my asthmatic son from the effects of the compressor station and save my 2 baby girls from coming down with asthma or something worse. In Rehoboth, I feel like the town is coming together around this and standing together against a multi-billion-dollar company with the intentions of quietly ransacking our environment and our land. A little bit about Rehoboth. Rehoboth is a right-to-farm community with a lot of organic farms and beekeepers. Rehoboth also has some endangered and threatened species. And I'd like to know where the research is on how those species will be affected. I haven't seen anything, and when Spectra came to talk to my town, they did not address those issues. So today I'm standing here on behalf of my 10-year-old son, my 6-year-old daughter, and my 3-year-old baby girl. And I'm asking everyone to think about this from an ethical standpoint. When I think about asthma in Massachusetts, and I think about Governor Charlie Baker and how he has stood up and said, we've got to do something about this, and how he released a 2015 strategic plan to fight asthma in the Commonwealth. It's a 5-year plan, 2015 to 2020. And when you look at that plan, it specifically speaks about reducing environmental factors that exacerbate or cause asthma. So I'm saying to you, how can these compressor stations that are putting pollutants up in the air make our environment better? Thank you.
Please excuse the ambient noise in the background. We are standing directly in front of the construction going on in this pipeline right now. Our next speaker is Dr. Curtis Nordgaard, a pediatrician and educator activist on the public health risks of fracked gas pipelines and infrastructure. He conducts air pollution and other research and has traveled to communities in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire faced with compressor stations to educate the residents on the health risks of these stations. Please welcome Dr. Nordgaard.
Thank you, Beth, for that introduction. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out here today on what could be a beautiful morning here in West Roxbury. And instead of enjoying this quiet morning, we're dealing with the construction noise that's going on behind us where a compressor metering and regulating station is being built right across from people's homes. And if you're here today, you can look around and see how close that station is to the people living in this neighborhood. I want to also be sure to thank all of the people who made today's event a reality and the people who made our organization a reality, not least of whom, I don't want to overlook anybody, but I certainly have to mention out one person who's been really instrumental in making this all happen, Susan Lees, with our organization, but also with Mothers Out Front. Thank you very much, Susan, for all your hard work, and everyone else as well. As Beth mentioned, I've had the honor of visiting a number of communities around New England and sharing what we know about what we used to call natural gas, but is really better described as fracked gas, since it's now produced by fracking in Pennsylvania and other states. And sharing what we know about our growing reliance on fracked gas and the infrastructure that comes along with that, and how those things might affect our health. One thing that I found to be generally true in all communities is that people really are concerned about health. We're concerned about our individual health. We're concerned about the health of our children. We're concerned about the health of our families, our neighbors, and our communities. And regardless of whether we're talking about a metering and regulating station, compressor station, liquefied natural gas facility, power plant, these are all fracked gas infrastructure that have the potential to impact our health. So that's true, but during the time that I've been going around and speaking on these issues, another thing has become clearly apparent to me, and that is that this fracked gas we're talking about might be primarily composed of methane, which in and of itself is a potent driver of climate change and very harmful to the environment. But at the same time, this fracked gas also contains a number of toxic and cancer-causing substances. When this gas is burned, it does not burn cleanly. When the gas is burned, it also releases a number of toxic and cancer-causing substances. I say that's generally true because it's not my conclusion. That information is available in publicly released documents released by the very companies that are delivering this gas into our state and burning it. So I think those two things are generally true. We all care about our health, and this gas poses a real health risk, whether it's directly from the gas or the way that we're utilizing it in our state. So it just begs the question, I think, when you put those two things together, how might our growing reliance on fracked gas and our build-out of fracked gas infrastructure, like the project behind us today, how might these things impact our health? Unfortunately, we don't have all the data that we need to really answer that question, but we do have a tool at our disposal that we heard about from Dr. Kochi, and that tool is the Comprehensive Health Impact Assessment. As Dr. Kochi mentioned, we've prepared a technical report which goes into detail and describes what comprehensive health impact assessments are, why we should be conducting them for these projects, and how we might implement them in our state. You can find that along with our call for a moratorium on new projects on our website. I encourage you to read both of those documents and learn more about these issues, either there and also through our Facebook page. You can also email us to get those documents. I had thought about reading that list, but rather than do that, I'd encourage you to look at it on your own, and instead I want to share a story that helps illustrate why we should be conducting health assessments as part of these projects. Right now, they only need to undergo projects like this, metering and regulating station, pipelines, other infrastructure, only undergo environmental assessments. Human health is only a secondary consideration for these projects. One of the projects that stands with me most as a pediatrician and a parent is a compressor station which would have been built as part of Kinder Morgan's Northeast Energy Direct pipeline. One of the stations on the pipeline would have been built half a mile from an elementary school. From the data available to us, we know that that compressor station could have released so much formaldehyde into the air that it could have caused acute and chronic toxic effects for the children attending that school if it had been built. At the same time, it also could have increased the risk of certain formaldehyde-related cancers for children attending that school. Was that part of the environmental assessment for that project? It was not. The environmental reports for that project pointed out that the air pollution from that facility would not violate federal air quality standards as part of the environmental review. Those standards only relate to a few of the major air pollutants. They did not address formaldehyde. What do you tell those families that would have sent their children to a school every day where they could have been exposed to toxic amounts of formaldehyde that might have increased their risk of cancer? That was not part of the environmental assessment. If we had comprehensive health impact assessments for that project and many others like it that are being planned or built in the state right now, we could address these health questions and concerns. Right now, it's all a mystery because these questions are not being asked. They're not being included in the review process. They may be asked by residents. They're not being included as part of the formal assessment. Fortunately, that station will hopefully never be built. The project is on hold or canceled indefinitely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are clearly facing infrastructure like the one being built behind us across the street from people's homes, compressor and an active blasting quarry on the other side of the street, compressor stations in Weymouth, Rehoboth, a pipeline expansion in western Massachusetts, pipelines all across the state, a liquefied natural gas facility in Acushnet, fracked gas power plants like the one being built in Salem. So this issue is not going away. These health questions are not going to go away, and they will not be addressed until comprehensive health impact assessments become a part of the environmental or complement the environmental review process. And again, I'd like to end with a note of optimism that we do have a tool right now that we can begin answering those questions. In fact, New Hampshire is leading the way. I recently found out that New Hampshire has enacted regulations that require comprehensive health impact assessments be completed for any high-pressure frac gas pipeline that's built in the state moving forward. So my final question today, I've raised a few, but I want to end with one question. As we look around the state, as we look around the people who have made the effort to come out here today, when will our communities have the benefit of a comprehensive health impact assessment for the infrastructure that's being considered for our communities? Fortunately, we have a path moving forward. Our organization hopes to move forward from today's press release and work with all of you and make that a reality for our communities. Thank you for coming.
Our final speaker is Seamus Whelan, a registered nurse. He is a Massachusetts Nurses Association member and a member of the steering committee for Stop the West Roxbury Lateral Pipeline. Here is Mr. Whelan.
Thanks again for everyone for coming here today. It's really appreciated, this community. As I said, I'm a bedside registered nurse. I'm active in my union, the Massachusetts Nurses Association. I'm also a resident. I live up the street in this incineration zone for the last 20 years with my family. And as a healthcare practitioner, healthcare professional, I believe, and it's the belief of my union and many other healthcare practitioners, that it's not enough to just take care of our patients at the bedside or in a clinical setting, but we must also deal when our communities and our families are placed in jeopardy and the health and safety of our communities are under threat. We must act. And that's one of the reasons I'm involved and here today. The Massachusetts Nurses Association, over the last 2 years, we've been fighting this battle in West Roxbury, have been strong supporters of our campaign here. And they've also been strong supporters of the campaign against the compressor station in Weymouth and are opposed to this insanity of building fracked gas infrastructure in our state. Also, it's been a hard last 2 years where we fought in this community to organize the community and to resist the efforts in West Roxbury. We have I'm part of the steering committee of the SWIRL, Stockton West Roxbury pipeline, lateral pipeline. And one of the things we've sought to do is reach out to other groups and to supporters who are concerned with this issue. We've reached out to organised labour, and I've been involved in getting the support. We've got great support from the Massachusetts Teachers Association. We have 3 schools right in this incineration zone. They've been great supporters. The Boston Teachers Associations have been with some assistance. We've also got support from the Postal Workers Union, the Boston local, of the Postal Workers Union, and also, who am I missing? Oh, recently we have SEIU 1119, sorry, have become involved with the held a teach-in in West Roxbury, and we like to welcome them into our family of resistance. I'd just like to make this one point. What we're seeing, this struggle is a struggle where the needs of corporations to make profits are being placed before the needs of our community to have a safe and healthy community. And this is not a new thing that is happening. In the modern era, we have seen a history of that. We saw the destruction of the community in the West End of Boston in the 1950s. And decade after decade, we've seen urban renewal, where the needs of developers and the rich and powerful corporations have been placed against and conflict with the needs of our communities. We saw the big dig, the corruption around the big dig. And this urban renewal that we've seen, it's been kind of through the Boston Redevelopment Authority. It's been an organized, they've actually legalized a level of corruption that's unbelievable. And this is what we faced in West Roxbury. The needs of Spectra Energy, an out-of-state company, have been placed before the needs, and also the needs for them to make profits and the needs of their shareholders, and also their accomplices, which are our national grid in this community. And that's what we're fighting against. And today we're here as healthcare practitioners, and we're organising to fight that. We're calling for a moratorium on new infrastructure, on new major fracked gas infrastructure. And this is an opportunity. For the last 2 years, we've been appealing to our elected officials to act. Some of them have ignored us. Some of them have voiced token opposition, but have done very little. We saw recently the state legislature failed to act with the gas pipeline tax. This is now an opportunity for them to act. And what we must find out, and we must emphasize, is that if they fail to act, what we need to do, our strength is that when we come together as healthcare practitioners, as communities, if we come together, we must continue to come together, we must organize our communities. And that's where our strength comes from. And if our elected officials refuse to act again, well then we must consider actually for those that aren't acting in our interests, using these organizations, these movements where we get our strength and oppose them where it counts in their elected positions. Again, I'd like to thank you, and this is a really great event, and it's a great start, and we hope we can continue to take this initiative, take it into our workplaces, educate our workplaces of our concerns, healthcare concerns related to this infrastructure, and to continue to build and strengthen it. And it's from that strength, that organization that real change comes from.
Thank you all for coming this morning and hearing not only about the important research done on the health risks of fracked gas pipeline infrastructure, but the stories of how they can impact citizens of the Commonwealth. Are there any questions from the press? The question is, what are the next steps for this new organization?
One of the first things that we did as an organization was develop a list of goals, calling for a moratorium until health impact assessments are instituted, accomplishes or is moving us towards meeting several of our goals. We put a lot of our resources into preparing for this event, and we're going to be meeting to plan our next steps. We will always continue investigating these projects and learning more about them. But I anticipate that we're going to be moving forward with our work to make this health assessment issue a reality for these projects. And so both as an organization and in coalition with other organizations in the state. So the question is, does the state have to do a health assessment for these projects, or just environmental or safety assessments? So there is no requirement to conduct a health impact assessment for any of these projects. And certainly for the ones I'm most familiar with, the health assessment is never done. That's why we're calling for a moratorium.
So first, would you be interested in finding legislative sponsors and trying to make that part of mandated, legislatively mandated practice?
The question is, would we want to meet with, find elected officials, especially at the state level, and make this a legislative priority? That is one of the options we're going to consider. And it's also possible that we could follow the path of New Hampshire and work on the regulations in the state on a more agency or executive branch path.
What can we do? Somebody else want to...
So the question is, what can we do? For one thing, you're here today. One thing that we have to do is ensure that both our organization and other organizations in the state are networking, because as we heard from the last speaker, it's only by working together that we can make this happen. I've been very impressed with how well New Hampshire has been organized for quite some time, and we have a lot of people who are involved with these different issues in the state. And again, health is a common denominator for all of these projects, along with climate change. And certainly, we're going to need to all work together if we're going to make this happen. So we'll be in touch.
Is there a plan to file a bill in January? I think the deadline for filing bills for the next two-year legislative session is January 2017. Has anyone gotten started on writing a bill like the one in New Hampshire?
Yeah. The question is, the deadline for filing a bill for the next legislative session is coming up in January. Are we making any movement on that? We have been internally organizing over the summer, and as I said, to answer your question, we don't have a bill right now, but that is going to be one of the options we consider. Do we try and make that happen now? We could, for example, form a coalition with all of the great work being done on gas leaks, and that would be one way to introduce this issue, is again a partnership with everybody who's activated on that issue.
Have you done any reaching out and gotten any response from anyone within the city of Boston, like the Boston Health Commission or the Boston Public Health Department?
Yeah. The question is, have we done any outreach or had any communication with city officials like the Public Health Commission? I actually, just as an aside, I happen to work with the medical director of the Public Health Commission. When I brought this issue up with him, he already informed me that community members had been in touch with him. His position is that everything happening with the West Roxbury lateral is outside of his domain. And that's because the systems right now do not address health directly. And so he's able to take that position. I have not yet been able to bear enough pressure on him to play an active role. But the environmental reviews that we talk about for these projects are part of the National Environmental Policy Act. It's really outdated. The way that they address climate change is incredibly superficial and outdated. It doesn't at all keep up with the science. And that's where something like a health impact assessment is something that can be flexible. It can incorporate all of the data. If you look at some of the health assessments that have been done in the city, some of them are great. Incorporate great data, conduct great analyses. We could be doing that for these projects, which clearly have the potential to affect our health.
So I will just mention that as part of this event today, we have sent letters. We've sent letters to our governor, to our legislators, to others, elected officials in public health areas, calling for the moratorium. This is sort of our opening salvo into making a comprehensive health impact assessment happen. So that has gone out today.
Thank you all for coming. I want to say that if you want to read the moratorium now, Susan has copies, or as they said, you can go online to their website. Thank you.